Hello and welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. Chris Gazdick and what's your name, Craig?
Graves.
That's right.
Graves.
Welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast where we invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. The goal is for emotional growth through the medium of this podcast. Please do know that this isn't the delivery of a therapy service in any way, but we do look for feedback and discussion on throughatherapisteyes.com. Mention also of Metrolina Psychotherapy Associates, the sponsoring agency. Serve adolescents, adults, children, couples. They were founded in July 1 of 2010. Anyway, they strive to create emotional growth with you. 704-461-8253, and they are at metpsych.com. The human emotional experience. Let's figure this out together. Q&A, question, review. We get to relax this time, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I think so.
We don't have to develop content. People developed it for us. I like that.
Yeah, it should be fun. We got a few questions that came in this time, so we're going to do a little show recap. We've published 11 episodes now.
Yeah.
And got some questions in. We thought it'd be a good idea to maybe go through some of the show and kind of talk about what we've learned and what we might expect going forward from the Through a Therapist's Eyes podcast with our listeners.
You know, interestingly enough, Craig, a focus on learning. I mean, we commented a couple times that you're going to be like an expert doing this day in or week in and week out as you focus on it. You know, make no mistake about it, I am still learning about all this stuff. It's one of the reasons why I like focusing on it, talking about it, because I'm very passionate about it, but I'm learning doing this show.
Yeah, I've learned a ton already in the past 11 episodes.
I feel like we're always on the process of learning, and that's part of where I dreamed up this idea of doing a show like this, because it's something that we need to learn a lot about, and even when you know about it, there's really so much more to learn. So I just wanted to make the point. It struck me when you said that. I'm learning.
Yeah, I am too, and I know a little bit about some of the things you've talked about. But I'm like the listener. I'm coming into this thing really cold. I don't do any research beforehand. I know the topic, but I don't do any Googling or anything like that before the show. So really, the things you're talking about, man, are mainly new to me, and I've learned a whole lot too.
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's one of the highlights of my week is recording the show and hanging out here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it really is, man.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. I really do. I think I feel the same way. It's relaxed to just talk about it than it is to really deal with it. Of course, when I go home and I'm dealing with it.
Yeah, that's true. It's easier to talk about some of these things than it is to actually go and do them, but it still is fun. And we've had some fun. We're starting to see some downloads across the globe. And we went up to Belmont Abbey last night, and Chris presented to the Psychology Club, which was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
25 students and a professor in there.
And I tell you what, if any of you guys hear the show after we were there, you better email us and let us know. That'd be really neat to know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from those guys, man. So we're just going to basically do a recap. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Chris. I mean, we did an intro episode, and we talked about what gave you the idea and your buddy Phil Donahue and stuff like that. But now that we've done 10
He's not my personal friend.
Well, yeah, I get that part. But now that we've done these episodes, I mean, what have you learned? I mean, what do you think the show is about now that we've got a few under our belt?
For me, that is a good thing for people to really know now that we got some content out. I guess I really want, number one probably is education and awareness about mental health and substance abuse. It's something that we don't know a lot about. I think it was in the intro actually when I commented how cool it was that my little kid had mental health and feelings mentioned in a health book. And what do you do to manage it? What do you do to deal with this? And I just thought that was the coolest thing since sliced bread doing what I do, So it's education, it's awareness, and hopefully a lot of tidbits and takeaways about, what can you really do? I mean, I really think about it in a day-to-day basis. What are we doing to manage our mental health? So education 1, awareness 2, and takeaway tidbits. How do you really do this day to day?
Yeah, I'm a takeaway person. I like to give some takeaways where applicable so people can go out Because I think a lot of the things that we talk about here are things people can do outside of a therapist office to improve their mental and emotional state. Like, if you're in a mindfulness practice, then that's kind of like working out, right? You're building your mind versus your muscles, but you're doing things outside of the therapist's office that can help your state, right? I mean,
absolutely. And you just said mindfulness, and I'm probably going out of order for what you wanted to do when we talked a little bit ago, but that's one of the questions, and I think it's a good example of what we just said. Some of the purposes.
Yeah, let's hold off on the questions.
Oh, it's a good one.
Until we go through the summary. Until we go through the summary.
All right.
I guess what I was just saying there is a lot of what we're talking about are things people can do. We're bringing awareness, like the marriage episode. Really, is just about awareness of engulfment and abandonment. So if you're going to see a therapist, those things. But then, like with the episode with Dan Miller, that's something you can actually execute to improve your mental and emotional state. Mindfulness is the same way. Contentment, moral courage even, if you could take some of those horrible examples that we talked about and might think about how you would handle those differently. So there are some takeaways there and some practices that you can do to improve your mental and emotional state.
From my lens, honestly, the fundamental truth is we are dealing with this every single day. It's like, it is a part of healthcare, but people think about, how do I take care of my health care regularly, routine checkups, and what did I eat today? Did I get my exercise in? Well, mental health care is equally so, a day-to-day basis. I feel like we deal with it every day, but we are so not aware of that part of it. We just don't think about feelings and emotions as much.
Yeah.
So this is about getting the day-to-day awareness out there of that.
I agree with
sure.
You. I agree with you. And I think we kind of answered the next couple of questions that I had written down. So what should listeners expect and what are the takeaways? And I think we kind of answered that in that first little blurb there. What should we look forward to in the future? I mean, what kind of topics are we going to cover? And I know we're working on a couple of guests I'm excited about. I think that a lot of men in general especially think that therapy is for wimps and that kind of stuff. And we're working on getting some guests on the show we think will break those barriers down. And I'm looking forward to we're talking about religion and mental health in the not so distant future. And I'm looking forward to that conversation with some guests we have lined up. But what are some other things, Chris, that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, it's funny because there are so many things that go through my mind that we're dealing with all the time. Basically, you could probably attach most anything you deal with in any given day that has feelings associated with it. I want to begin dealing with them and talking about them. That's pretty broad, I know, but that's the reality of it. I mean, I'm super excited. As a matter of fact, I think the next one is going to be parenting, if that's what we talked about. Parenting, dealing with kids, managing family, specific diagnostic stuff that people do deal with. I want to have awareness about those. Specifically having a show about anxiety, specifically having a show about depression, specifically having a show about bipolar, because we hear these things but there's actually symptoms of a condition that I do want to talk about. I'm excited about an interesting show I think that's going to be, why do you need a diagnosis in the medical field of mental health? And I have a lot of thoughts about that. I actually feel that that's an important thing. What else? I mean, it goes on and on in my mind. Honestly, I'm really excited about talking about the military more. I'm really excited about talking about substance abuse much more than what we were able to cover.
Yeah, we could dig into that one for sure.
And that spider webs out to opioids and medical prescriptions and how that works. Shoot, psychotropic medications in and of themselves. So it's crazy, guys. I know you don't want to listen to us for 5 hours a week, but I'm looking forward to covering all these things, and we've got a lot of good content coming up.
Yeah, you rattled off some of we kind of talked about the topics before the mics came on, and Chris rattled off some cool ones I think are going to be very interesting. So I think you talked about treating mental health issues with marijuana. I think you mentioned that. That's going to be an interesting topic. I can't wait to hear that.
Is it legal yet?
No, well, not,
We're in North
not
Carolina. Is it
North
legal yet?
Carolina.
It's not legal here?
Not legal here, so
Ah.
we can't use it to treat it
CBD
here,
oil
but,
is, though.
yeah, CBD oil is, and I think there's some breakthroughs there that if you go out and do some research on that. Another one you mentioned was an episode on school shootings. What one was that about?
Yeah. What did I rattle off there? The mind of a school shooter?
Right,
You know, what goes on in the mind's eye of a school shooter?
Yeah.
Some thoughts about that?
That's a good topic, too, and there's some interesting things going on there that I won't bring up now that I'd like to bring up on that show, you know, about what may be the cause of some of this stuff. And so that should be a fun one, too. Any anything in the future that you're really looking forward to getting out there that we haven't talked about yet?
I really feel passionate about all of them. I don't know how to answer that. I really don't know how to cut any of those out because they're all important.
No, we're going to cover them all.
I mean,
absolutely.
I can't single it out. I guess just say not cover.
Okay,
cut it out, but I can't single that out, man. I'm excited about all of them because they're all really important.
Yeah. I think they're going to be good. I think it's going to be good stuff too. Okay, so
what's been your favorite one so far?
Actually, that's another one I have written down here.
Well, great
My
minds
favorite
think
one
alike.
so far. Let me pull up the list because we're going to kind of go through each one and maybe hit a couple highlights. But I really enjoyed the episode 10 with Dan Miller. You know, Dan. I've been listening to Dan now for a long time, as I said in that show, and you know, if you spend 40 plus hours in a job situation that you don't enjoy, to put it lightly. You know, that's going to have a huge effect on your mental and emotional state. And I think Dan offers some good advice on how to change that.
He's been doing it, man. He's been walking the walk with a lot of people trying to transform.
He's been doing it. I'd like to maybe have him back on the show at some point.
That would be cool.
You know, that'd be awesome to get him back on to talk in more detail about his job search process, maybe. And I'm not sure how applicable
it'd be
that
interesting
is
to talk
mental
with
health,
him about
but-
job interviewing and mental health aspects of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be a really good topic. So that was probably my favorite one so far. Technology anxiety was awesome because, you know, I've been in technology now for a little over 20 years and to talk with Adrian and hear some of his experiences and then hear how he deals with people who are, you know, in jacked up emotional states because of technology and how to bring themselves down was good. That was a fun show. And so I probably would say that, you know, those two in that order are my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got kind of a tie too. Mine was the police one on episode 4, really, well, not police one, the first responder compound trauma one, because that's something I've really wanted to talk about for a long time. Man, I just see these news stories and I just screaming in my head. We need to get some stuff going to help people on that level. And the other one was moral courage. Just because I was so surprised I went to an ethics conference and got that much out of an ethics conference. But it changed my brain in the way that I think about the difficulty and the importance of speaking up when you see things.
Yeah. Such a hard thing to do, but it should be a no-brainer, but it seems like it's a hard thing for people to wrap their heads around.
Should be, but it really is hard, was one of the main points on that I was trying to think about and make.
Yeah. So let's just maybe we'll hit each one, and maybe you can highlight something that or not, you know. And I think you have some questions that relate to each episode, and we'll go through those as we go through the episodes. But episode 1 was the intro, but episode 2 was on the elusive mental health goal of contentment.
Right.
So anything you want to point out on that episode?
Honestly, episode 1 to me and contentment, I think, kind of work together because episode 1 was the cornerstone of mental health, and that was a really important thing to understand.
Okay.
The basic cornerstone of taking care of yourself.
Well, my apologies for grazing over
Yeah,
that.
no, I mean, they combine because contentment, you don't get content without being able to do basic fundamental aspects of mental health, which self-care,
Yeah.
in episode 1
Yeah.
really was.
Okay, so make sure you listen to 1 if you're listening to 2. Episode 3 was a tough episode. We interviewed Aaron Clark, who recently lost his son Cody.
Update on that is well, actually, since we're doing a review too, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm guilty of not checking it for a few weeks, but a little plug for them. The GoFundMe is still active, I believe. Aaron Clark at whatever GoFundMe.com.
Yeah, and if you go to our
That's
website
important.
and look for episode 3, then you'll see the GoFundMe link in there.
I don't think that he would be too upset for me saying. I mean, they're struggling, not necessarily financially necessarily. But that's important, but emotionally.
I can only imagine. I'm sure that they are. That's a process. Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Episode 4 you kind of touched on already was compound trauma. The real issue with police shootings. Very interesting, informative show. Episode 5 we've kind of hit on a little bit too. That was the mindfulness episode. Mindfulness has really hit the mainstream. I saw a Time magazine the other day that was strictly about, it was a special issue about mindfulness. And so it really is a big mainstream thing now, being mindful.
That was where I was going to comment. I'm going to throw it in because that was one of the listener really kind of comments and questions that I thought was really cool. How did he put it? He or she. Mindfulness episode. Listen, commented that it seems to me, they said, here it is, that the sensory technique you described for panic attacks should be common knowledge, just like it's common knowledge on blood pressure and other medical facts. And I loved that when they said that, because to me, that's part of what I really want and what I'm passionate about is getting clarity on things that we're dealing with every day. And I think they're true, that they're absolutely right on. Really, everyone should know that. And as a matter of fact, when we were talking at Belmont Abbey, did you remember hearing that lady, one of the students there when we were talking to, how she was like, yeah, I just fell into somebody she knew was having a panic attack. Right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
She did that.
Yeah.
And people really need to know things like that little nugget to implement on everyday life. So to you who sent that in, thank you. That's neat to hear you think of things in the way that should be common everyday knowledge and agree that that's the case. I love that.
It's a good thing we're getting the word out because a lot of folks don't know that. I remember 17, 18 years ago, I had panic attacks, and the answer for my doctor was Paxil.
Yeah.
As opposed to breathing techniques.
Which isn't bad. It isn't a bad answer, but it's an incomplete. It's not a solution.
Absolutely not. Suicidal versus homicidal risk factors was number 6. That was an interesting show. Mainly an awareness show, right, Chris? We didn't really give any takeaways there.
Right. No, because that was trying to change some cultural awareness about homicidal thoughts and behavior that people have. That's a tough one.
Yeah, those kind of things should be probably brought into the light, but there's some issues around bringing that stuff up, right? I mean,
shame, guilt, moral courage fits real well with that.
Yeah, moral courage was number 7. So Chris talked about some instances, pretty big instances. The Jerry Sandusky case, the Urban Meyer situation, and I'm not sure where that is now, and also the Catholic priests. I mean, those were big issues that people just simply overlooked and ignored when they knew the truth.
You know what? Sad truth is that, we do some updates there. Sandusky, everybody knows about that. Just, I don't know, is done. The Urban Meyer thing is pretty much done too. That's passed.
Okay.
Because he's coaching. They're winning.
And everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Man, everybody's happy. And honestly, I'm a little bit afraid. I mean, I don't want to do I don't know. I'm really afraid that the Catholic Church thing will sort of disappear too, because I was talking to somebody about that. It might have been, I forget where, if it was emailing a little bit back and forth with somebody, might have been the case there. But I was talking to somebody in some regard, nevertheless, and man, I didn't realize it, but this molestation thing that came out from Catholic priest systems and such that we described or briefly talked about first broke in like 1980s, Greg.
Yeah.
We're in 2018. Okay, that can't be 2038.
Yeah, unbelievable. There is justice though in this world or the next. So
that's right.
Absolutely. Where do we leave off? So, substance abuse and addiction was number 8. And that's a thing we could talk about for a long, long time.
We're going to cover that on different facets.
Yeah, and I think we plan on having people on both sides of the issue in here, right? We got maybe potentially some people who've struggled with addiction who are going to come in and chat with us on one of our shows, and then maybe bring in some people who specialize in substance abuse counseling. Is that right, Chris?
We can, yeah. I know a lot of people.
Okay.
With that.
Yeah. So that was an interesting episode. Did you say you had a question on episode 8 too, on substance abuse?
We need to let's wrap up the review and get to the questions actually, because I'm aware that we're 20 minutes in already. All right, so yeah, substance abuse was one of the big questions that we had, and it was something that we weren't able to cover a lot on. How did they put it? Here it is. Can you speak about the difference between substance abuse and substance addiction? And tagged on to that, John wrote in. He's like, I'm having a hard time, quote unquote, difficulty with not being addicted to heroin is what they said, and he said it's okay to
With
use
himself or somebody?
No, with somebody.
I see.
And he made it okay to use his name. He said that. So John, yeah, listen, man. I thought about that after I listened back to the playback, and generally speaking, when people do get to harder drugs, it may not have came out as really clear, but people start out with addiction issues really small. You've heard of gateway drugs?
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. People start experimenting with, a little dipping and smoking, nicotine. Now it's vaping. Every kid's got a vape machine. Yeah. So there's these gateway realities that people have with drugs, and they begin to experiment with things, and then that high is not quite enough, and they sort of start experimenting with other things. And if you find pot, and then you might find a little bit of sniff of coke, and then people start, popping a little bit of a mushroom. Ooh, we're tripping, yay. They start just playing around with different things, and then basically people find that have biological addiction, they're what really does it for them, a drug of choice, and they get kind of really used to doing that drug of choice. But as addiction progresses, the hard drugs probably are really where you've progressed with drug addiction and you've gotten there. I mean, the percentages of people that have drug and alcohol addictions that have tried alcohol are probably really small.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right? It's about 10 to 15% of our society has addiction.
Yeah, okay.
Of the percentage of people that have tried heroin, the percentage is probably a lot higher. Because obviously that's a strong drug.
Yeah. Well, that was my point on the show. I know people who
you did comment,
who walk into a bar and have a drink and walk out. I don't know anybody that takes a shot of heroin and is not in a bad spot.
Right. Right, but at the same time, you can't really say, oh, yeah. I can't sit here and tell you right now, to answer you, John, that if somebody has tried heroin, they're an addict. I can't. I need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I think is my main point.
Yeah. We can cover more details on the next.
We will, but I really need to mention addiction versus abuse, and we will cover that more. But abuse of a substance is highly characterized by having a problem that had popped up, like a DUI, and then you continued using it somewhat destructively. Addiction is highly characterized by not having control, and I talked about that on the show.
Yeah.
But that's, those of you that are therapists listening to us, you'll understand DSM-4. We really talked about it as alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and dependence. Those were the differences there.
Right.
But we'll cover that more in detail.
Good deal. Episode 9 was technology anxiety. We talked about that one a little earlier. It was a lot of fun to record that one with Adrian. If he's listening. I think you had a question there too, Chris.
Oh yeah, you're right. Technology anxiety episode. See,
number 9.
They said, how does social media contribute to technology anxiety, and how do we combat it? Yeah, I should have thought about that a little bit more, because social media, I probably have a lot of comments about that. I think I talked about it on the show a little bit. Social media definitely creates anxiety, I think, with people. What do you think, Craig? Let me think for a second. What do you see with social media? How does it contribute? How do we combat it?
Well, I guess combating it, you got to detox. Yeah. Turn that, one of the things that's helped me put my phone down is turning off notifications.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it has. I mean, if I don't see the notification on there, I'm not as likely to go checking it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I've done that by natural too.
Yeah.
I've found myself actually stopping watching Fox and CNN.
I cut that out a long time ago.
I still want to stay tapped because, we're in an election cycle right now. I want to be informed.
Well,
but limits are probably the answer to this question.
Yeah.
How can you put limits, your own behavioral limits on how much you tap into, because I don't know what episode it was. Stuff blends in a little bit to me, but we talked a lot about focus points.
Yeah.
Whenever we were talking about CBT, cognitive therapy, what you focus on, you feel. And when you're focusing on things that are stressful and negative, and man, you guys, some people out there like to rant on social media.
Yeah.
In matter of fact, here's a good thought about this that occurs to me. That definitely happens on social media. I should think of a cool phrase for it, like the screen, the magic of the screen.
Yeah.
You're looking at somebody eyeball to eyeball. You will not say certain things. You're looking at somebody screen to screen. Okay, you'll say a whole lot of crap in anything. I taught my kids. I remember very clearly several years ago. Aaron, you'll listen to this someday, or maybe you're listening now with your friends. He's a teenager. Probably not. Anyway, what you will be willing to say to somebody face to face is the only thing you should be saying on social media. Can I put that out as a public awareness comment?
Oh, yeah.
I think that should be a societal standard. Let me say that again. What you are willing to say to somebody eyeball to eyeball, and you check yourself, because you'll say, oh, yeah, I'd say that to anybody. But the reality of it is, would you? Right? What you're willing to say and talk about face to face with somebody should be all that you're willing to say on social media.
I agree 100%, but we all know that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
Not the way it works at all.
Yeah. Can I go on to a couple more questions we got, because we're short on time?
Yeah, workplace, episode 10 was workplace stress and life planning. We talked about that one already. That was the Dan Miller show. And then episode 11 was interesting. You know, what was it, EFT and marriage?
Yeah, and that was the question I was really burning to get to.
Okay, well, let's get after it then.
Marriage episode. I want to grow, and I want to grow with my spouse, but feel like they're not interested in growing with me. So is there any way that I can get him interested in personal development with me? Yeah. You know, it's a double-binded question. It's an excellent question to you that wrote it in. Thank you for doing that and being brave to talk about that way with the way that she was honest about her own intentions. The answer is really kind of obviously no. You can control what you can control. You can't control your other person. Craig, I would love to control you if I could, but I really wouldn't. Because if I were to try to control you, I'd make you give me $100,000, and I know you don't have it, and then I'd feel guilty. It'd be crazy.
Yep, that's right.
You can't control your spouse, and your spouse can't control you. But we kind of try. Sadly, is the reality of it. So the beauty of a marriage that works well is when you find yourself on that same page and in tune, and that happens when you date. But when the years kind of go on by, you can kind of grow in different directions. And part of what we want to get at with the EFT model is really gaining some courage to grow in the same direction. But when only one of you is willing to do that, you really can only control what you can control, which is
you.
That's it. But ironically and somewhat paradoxically, I have a lot of hope out there because of a weird belief that I kind of have, Greg. Maybe it's a little Pollyannish and too optimistic, which I used to be accused of being too optimistic and borderline naive when I was younger. I guess I still am, but
younger or naive?
Both. I'm definitely younger. Now, listen. If you're changing and growing in a positive way, I really feel like people are drawn to that. So if you control what you can control, which is
yourself,
right, and you're getting healthier, I do feel like people are drawn to that. And that becomes attractive.
Yeah.
That becomes interesting. That becomes intriguing. So you definitely can absolutely paradoxically influence the marriage, which you're powerless over half of, with really improving in a healthy way for yourself. So I guess, like I said, she who wrote in, is there any way to get him interested in personal development with me? The answer is no, but you do it yourself, and paradoxically, I think I could kind of say yes in a weird way.
Good answer. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
I would have said no, you can't do it. But you're true. That's right.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is spot on. Good job there.
What else did we have? Did we cover all the questions that we had?
I think that's all the questions, and we kind of hit on each episode too.
did,
so
yeah.
I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover this evening.
Absolutely.
Right
Yeah.
on time too. It looks like.
It's been fun, Craig. I do look forward to it. I think we do a recap. I think recaps are probably something that we'll do less of because people will see. We maybe for the first time pulled that in, but the question and answer is something we'll do from time to time for sure.
Yeah, and as I mentioned this on the last show, you can go to throughwhatherapisteyes.com and click on the Contact Us link and submit a question to us completely 100% anonymously. So if you don't put your name and email address in there, it uses John or Jane Doe and uses one of our email addresses for Through a Therapist Eyes. If you want to get a response from Chris, you can overwrite those values with your own name, as John did, and your own email address, and Chris can respond directly to you. But if
And I respond.
He
We don't
does
have
respond.
thousands and thousands and thousands of people yet, so
Not
I
yet.
am able
Not
to
yet. It's
respond,
coming.
really.
But yeah, so if you want to go do that anonymously and send in a question, we'd love to hear from you. We will answer it on a future show. And so I kind of wanted to do this recap just because we're fresh into our podcast with some 11 episodes, and kind of wanted to let the listener know where we were and where we were going. So that's kind of what the idea behind the recap was for this show.
Good call.
Anything else you want to cover, Chris?
I think we're good, man.
Okay, guys. I mentioned.
it is.
I
There is actually. I like to highlight the next thing we're going to do, and the very next time we're going to meet is going to be on parenting. It is part of what I call the trifecta in my brain.
The trifecta.
The trifecta is the three most influential things that I've kind of come across thus far. EFT was last time, and it was first for a reason. Second one was Financial Peace University from a guy named Dave Ramsey that I really think nails it. And the third we're going to cover next time, Love and Logic for Parenting.
Yeah.
I don't know what they have in common. I haven't really sat down and thought about it.
Yeah.
But I have intentions to kind of think about it, look at it, really meditate on it, and write about it. Because they're three completely different things that nail something similar in my brain as a foundation. So we're going to get into parenting, dealing with all those little kiddos next week.
Oh, parenting. That should be a quick topic, right? There's nothing to that.
It might be 3 hours.
Obviously, I'm kidding there. Throughwhatherapisteyes.com, folks. We have show notes on each episode, including this one. We've also got an email list out there on the home screen. I'd love for you guys to sign up so we can stay in touch that way. There's also links to our social media on throughwhatherapisteyes.com. You can find links to the podcast, so you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play. You can also listen to the show right there on the website in each episode show notes. And if you are listening on one of those platforms I mentioned, I would love it if you would leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. And be sure to tell all your friends too.
I would love it also.
Absolutely.
See you guys next week.
Take care.